the pendulum is swinging, right? When it comes to the politics from one end to the other, which direction is the pendulum swinging, and has it reached its apex?
Well, one of the stories I tell in my book, The Pardon, is of Gerald Ford's pardon of Richard Nixon after Watergate in 1974. And that turned out to be very unpopular. And as a result of that, presidents were really very shy about issuing controversial pardons for quite some time. But with the first Trump, then Biden, then now the second Trump presidency, we see a lot more use of the pardon to reward allies and punish enemies. And I think that's a very unfortunate development. I think there have been a lot of bad pardons in recent years. But because of the structure of the Constitution, there's really nothing anyone can do about it. There's no check or balance on the power to pardon. It's just it is close to an absolute power.
Are we now? Can you compare pardons to these executive orders, and what's the difference and what's similar between the two?
I think they're very similar. I think when you look at the personality, the temperament that is reflected in Donald Trump's character, this is someone who is deeply transactional and, frankly, narcissistic. It's all about him. He wants to reward his friends and punish his enemies. That's what a lot of these executive actions are all about. And that's what the pardons were about. When you look at the pardon of the 1600 January 6 rioters, that was Trump effectively pardoning himself because he was a January 6 defendant as well. And if you look at the continuing use of the pardon, abortion protesters who had violated the rights of women who were trying to get abortions, Rod Blagojevich, the corrupt former governor of Illinois, all these people are receiving pardons from Trump because they are political allies, not because there was anything wrong with their underlying convictions.
What can you explain to the audience? What benefits does the president get directly from these pardons? I mean, is it more money for election campaigns? What is it?
Well, I don't think it is a direct quid pro quo kind of thing, where there is, money changes hands or anything like that. But these can be political payoffs. These are ways of repaying political supporters who, and that's something politicians like to do. I think they need to temper that desire with the idea of equal protection of the laws. Just because you're the president's son, when you commit a crime, you shouldn't be able to get away with it completely. Just because you commit a violent crime that the president happens to support, as in the January 6th, you shouldn't get away with it. But, that's how the pardons are being used.
Do you see pardons being handed out to individuals, part of the Department of the OGE, and these current things that are in place, executive orders that might not be totally legal at the end of the day?
I think they're really separate issues, but they come out of the same, a similar motivation, which is to concentrate power in the Oval Office by President Trump and use his power to reward his friends and punish his enemies.
Mm. Talking about absolute powers, I mean, the president also, he goes ahead and he picks the justices and it's almost like rigging the Supreme Court. How do you feel about that right now and this point in time in our country?
Well, all presidents pick Supreme Court justices who are sympathetic to their views in general, but Trump took that certainly to an extreme, and he has been rewarded with a series of court decisions that are very, very favorable to him, including the one that came out of his criminal case in Washington, which has essentially put all presidents, including starting with President Trump, outside criminal accountability. I mean, after the Supreme Court case of Trump v. United States, it's going to be next to impossible to ever prosecute a president for any crimes committed in office. And that's a pretty chilling thought.
Mm. The pardon, what gave you this idea to write this book, and why now? Why is it so important, especially now?
Well, as the 2024 campaign, began, I saw that Trump was clearly going to consider pardoning the January 6 people, and Kamala Harris, I knew, if she won, was going to be under pressure to pardon Trump in the way that Ford pardoned Nixon to let the country move on from controversy. So I figured pardons would be in the news. I didn't quite figure how much they'd be in the news in the early part of 2025. So in that respect, I guess I was just pretty lucky with my timing.
And that's what it's all about. You're on television and now radio and now in a book. How important is it that to use your platform for what you find is just in America?
Well, I think there's a reason why the First Amendment to the Constitution is first, because freedom of the press and freedom of speech is an indispensable tool in a democracy. I don't have I think an inflated idea of my own importance or my own value, but I do think people speaking out, writing books is something that is very important in preserving our democracy.